Yo. What's up, guys? If anybody can hear me and see the screen, give me a thumbs up, please. Jim. Jim. It's a good morning in Yankee land. Christmas come early in New York. Listen, I get it. The big name trade signings, rarely do they live out. You know what I mean? Eventually bite you in the ass. But one of my favorite players to watch in the game, Stanton, for obvious reasons. Ever since the day he's come up, you know, he's been on fantasy, all my fantasy keeper teams. I'm just a big Stanton guy. The guy's a monster. So I really, honestly, I didn't think there was a shot until yesterday when the news started to break. But that Yankee lineup is going to be fun to watch next year. A must-watch every night. But yeah, I think they're giving up Starling, Castro, and some mid-level prospects. Nothing huge. Florida got kind of stuck because they had to get rid of him with the new ownership, and he's got a big contract, you know? Yeah, it was more of that than prospects. They were kind of caught behind the eight ball. They had a better deal in place with the the Giants and the Cardinals. Right, $324 million. For any player, I don't care who it is, that's ridiculous. Let alone a guy that can't stay healthy a full season. But supposedly they had better deals in place with the Cardinals and Giants, and Stanton wouldn't waive his no-trade clause. That no-trade clause was a killer. So really had Florida caught in a tough spot. Yeah, if you can avoid throwing that in there in the deal, but a lot of these players demand it. You know, and I mean, Stanton got big money anyway, but a lot of times you'll be able to cut on the money a little bit if you throw a no trade clause in there, but it really puts them in a tough spot. I don't understand that whole, and granted it was different ownership and all, but I just don't understand that whole Stanton signing, you know? Even with the old ownership, it made sense to trade him at peak value. You know you would have never been able to hang on to this guy. You had to pay him. It'd be tougher to move with a big contract. I don't know if I believe that, Jim. Jim is a Red Sox fan, and he just mentioned he's glad for me. I'm not going to be able to swallow on that, Jim, but I'll be nice and say thank you. But yeah, it's good for baseball. You know what I mean? It's good for baseball. The Red Sox got a good team. You know, you got some good pitching there, good young players. The Yankees now are officially on the map, if not already off the last season. So I'm kind of excited already. You know, Christmas here. Before you know it, spring training is right around the corner. I'm kind of lost without baseball. Yeah, that's how I am. You know, like I'm an old man now. You know, when I was younger, anything the Red Sox did bothered me. You know, the Mets pissed me off. But now, you know, I'm more of a baseball fan than anything else. You know, we're not kids anymore. So anything that makes the game more interesting, I'm for. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. All right, let me get everything set up here. I'm going to try to give it a whirl with Thinkorswim and these charts. I don't know if that's a good idea, but we'll give it a shot. And I got private Twitter. Very interesting week. This market's full of interesting weeks. And we'll go over pretty much what we spoke about last Saturday in the webinar. The theme is still there, has carried over, so we'll talk a little bit about that and what we've been seeing out of flow in relation to that as far as the rotation and stuff. But anytime you get a dip like we just had and a snapback, you know, some of the tech FANG names snap back really nice for a trade. And yeah, we got Bitcoin, the talk of the town, Bitcoin. Nobody even cares about the market. And that can't be a bad thing. That cannot be a bad thing. But as far as the retail crowd, which we talk about a lot, they are 110% focused on the Bitcoin, especially with the futures opening up Sunday. You know, this is what I mean. Like, this game is just one big legalized casino. You know, that's all it is. I mean, what's going on in Bitcoin right now? This is investing. I love when people say, I'm investing in Bitcoin. The funny thing is, the people who are actually investing in Bitcoin at this point are the players who are going to get mangled. The people who are trading Bitcoin, if you're not getting hacked and your money stolen out of your account, are the guys who are having some fun here. You got hit pretty good in that pull, the market pull. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Little by little, Jim, you're going to get better at trying. You can't avoid it. It's impossible to avoid. So forget that. The only thing is, if it stings too much, you got to get better at minimizing the risk up there. You know what I mean? Because when the market, you know, we talk about that a lot, constantly. You almost forget about it because the market just continues to go higher. But when you have a market stretch like that, there's going to be some sort of pull. It's just a matter of when. And you got to try to get yourself to really trim down your risk. This way, if the market continues higher, you're making a little bit of money. You don't want to go totally in cash because you can miss a ton of upside. But if you get caught in a pull, it's not, like you mentioned, an ouch pull. You know what I mean? It's a pull you're like, all right, I'm not happy about it, but I'm ready to fire. I got some bullets to fire here. I've been waiting for something like this. But you're never going to be able to avoid that as a swing trader, so don't even think about that. You'll get yourself in trouble trying to figure out a way to avoid getting caught in a pull. It's impossible. All right, let me get this started here. So everybody sees the screen fine, right? You see the charts. Then I'm switching to the Wall Street Jesus site. You guys see all that? No charts. Okay, see, we had this issue last time. Thank God you said that. Let me see. Yes, it's okay. No one sees. There you go. It was stuck on the screen. Thank you. This is like the last time. I don't know why this all of a sudden happened. Now you should see charts. Let me know. Okay. And now you should see Wall Street Jesus screen. You see me switching over? All right, good. You see Jesus making it rain, all the money falling from the sky? All right, that's good. All right, let me hit record and we're good. All right, welcome everybody. Happy Saturday. Wall Street Jesus here, Saturday Sweep Series. And a good morning it is. Already talking with a good friend of mine, Jim, and several baseball fans this morning about Stanton looking like he's wearing a Yankee uniform. I think he's got to pass some physicals and stuff like that. But an interesting morning if you're a baseball fan, and that's why you hear maybe a little pep in my step this morning, walking a little taller as a Yankee fan. So knock on wood, that'll doesn't fall through, and we see that happen. But other than that, I think last week was a solid topic where we were talking about the rotation in the market and what we were seeing. It was more on the drastic side as far as big money rotating out of all the stuff that's been so hot, FANG, high beta, tech, just basically everything that has continuously pushed higher for months and was so overdue for a wash, finally caught that wash, and we saw money rotate out of that into the financials once again and some other key spots. A lot of people just talking about the financials, but there's a lot of other key groups that I think, in my opinion, offer some decent opportunity, okay, at least into year end, and we'll see what the new year, how we roll over into the new year, whether we just correct as a market as a whole, because that's an option. The market hasn't corrected yet because of the drastic rotation that takes place. So in other words, all the money, we have a little bit of a consolidation for a month, let's say a couple of weeks, and then everybody rushes in to the tech, FANG, and high beta names. And chase. They go up basically in a straight line, okay, until they reach a point where it gets a little bit choppy, all right? And then when they need to breathe, the money comes out of that. So you see a little bit of breathing in those names, right? Some choppy consolidation / pullback and that stuff. And instead of them selling everything across the board, which would cause a pullback, okay, create a larger pullback than what we've been seeing in the markets, they just take those funds and pour it into other groups. So then you'll see the financials outperform, and you see the financials get hot for a good couple of weeks. Energy names will get hot. Biotech will find a hot spot. So that's what has really been a huge factor in this market not having your normal, correction that we're so used to seeing. And going into, coming out of this last rally, okay, that's what a lot of us were talking about in the steam room, that it's going to be really hard for the market to correct at this point. Yeah, a lot of the semi names, the tech names are way extended, okay, and overheated. Extremely bullish sentiment, the whole 9 yards. But they cannot sell everything else that's been neglected and ignored in this market that's already in a correction. In other words, you had names, material names, steel names, the food stocks, right? Names like Costco, retailers, you had literally 75%, and this is just, again, I'm probably exaggerating, but a number off the top of my head. But it felt like to me, 75% of the market was in basically a correction while the semis, tech, and FANG were just pushing higher every day. All right, so by looking at that, it would be really difficult for them to take this market down 5% as a whole, okay, when all those sectors have already corrected. I mean, you look at names like the steel names or the food names. Costco is a popular name, right? Let me minimize this. Hang on. So we got Costco here. This is a daily chart. And, you know, you can't look at it now because it doesn't even do it justice, but Costco off the Amazon news, okay, when they bought Whole Foods and all that crap, you had a correction in this thing, a legitimate correction. Like, this thing got ugly. Several of these names got ugly. The whole retail sector was annihilated. Okay, so this is a correction. So while this market, the Qs, the semis, you know, were just continuing higher, you had other things and other groups that were doing the complete opposite. So now my point was, if they're going to take down some of the tech names that need to correct and need a wash, they're not likely to take down this Costco the same way. It wouldn't make sense. So what happened was, and you look for flow to confirm it, I do anyway, you see money come out of that stuff and into all these things. And that's exactly what we've been seeing. Literally, all the other stuff, it hasn't been just financials. A lot of people are just talking about financials. There's a rotation from tech to financials. No, you have a lot of different things that are catching rotation right now. So what happens is the initial rotation, when the tech sell off and all the hot stuff sells off like it did, right? I'm trying to give me a name that has come in. Let's just take a big name, like a Netflix, let's say. So when you got this initial wash, which is probably the most vicious, right? That's where it's most exaggerated, okay? Then you see them bum rush into the leaders. Transportation was another sector we talked about, all right? I mean, they were unconscious last week, how much money was rotating into that. So you see the big, drastic, obvious rotation initially. And then what happens, again, like we spoke about the last couple of weeks, it's more gradual now. So in other words, tech doesn't have to fall apart. Okay, maybe there's some weakness, but the likelihood is the weakness will probably get bought up and these things chop around, okay? Or you might selectively find some tech names doing better than others. Some high beta names faring better than others. The point is, you can't throw a dart there in the group and just watch these things trade higher each and every day, okay? Now, where the smart money is going, where the flow is going, they're going into everything else, everything else. Retail, you could have literally took a dart and thrown it at the whole retail sector, okay? That has exploded. Transportation has been incredible. I mean, you look at what the trainees have done here, and this, you know, this is a sector that doesn't usually move like this. This pullback, remember we discussed this was ugly. This was bleeding out every day, and this was ugly. This looks like peanuts now compared to this rally back to new highs. Look at that move. All right, so while this was going on, some of the big boys like the UNP was catching some big time flow. CSX, one of the first ones to start catching flow. They were a bit early on this thing. And then the flow, you know, has exploded. Now seeing put selling, seeing everything. So initially they go into the leaders, and now it sort of spills into the underbelly. And I think that's where the big opportunity is, knock on wood, going into the rest of this year, through the holidays. You're going to see the underbelly of all these groups start to outperform, okay? We were talking again in the steam room. We were talking about how the uglier a name looks right now, almost the better it is. Okay, I'll give you an example. Teva, okay, which, and again, we want the flow to be there because otherwise we're guessing that the smart money, the big money, the institutional money is going to be rotating into it. And if they don't, you're kind of stuck, right? I mean, for me, I got nothing else to base it on. But for me, if you're starting to see flow in these things, that's your heads up that they're going to be in place. So this Teva, again, before even the rotation started, we started to see some aggressive Jan call buying. Okay, then it started to accelerate, and little by little, just creeping higher each and every day. And then you had a little dip here as some of the tech and all that stuff rebounded, and then boom, the money rushed right back in on Friday, took advantage of it. VRX, again, one of the early ones. This VRX, since you got this earnings here, the flow has been incredible in this thing. Literally every single day, there's VRX call sweepers. Every single day. And I'm not going to lie to you. Initially, when I saw that, I ignored it. I'm not going to say I ignored it, but I didn't pay as much attention to it because, there was action in better looking names at the time. But this VRX, a little before earnings, we thought it might be earnings flow, okay, because, it's tough to get a gauge on that earnings stuff. And then after earnings, even after the gap up, the flow just continued. And a good example, again, of the strength in these things is not when they're higher. You hear me talk about this all the time. What does the flow look like when these things come in? Okay, and VRX had this day of shakeout right here. Again, probably because some of the hotter stuff, the high beta stuff, was performing well, so they took some profit there. But the flow, they were buying throughout that whole day into that weakness. And then we just saw the flow explode on Friday. Teva and VRX, right from the ding-dong, the opening bell, ding-ding-ding, it was a race between VRX and Teva sweepers throughout the whole entire day. You could ask any member. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous. To me, it looked like almost the same group, the same syndicate buying the two names. There was a Teva sweep, and 2 seconds later, there'd be a sweep in VRX calls. And then there would be a VRX sweeper, and a couple minutes later, Teva got swept. So the hot money is starting to spill in these things. Okay, and again, I'm not, like I told you guys last week, I think it was, or the week prior. That doesn't mean tech has to fall apart. Okay, and there could be some good tech. There could be some good, decent names in tech. It might be a little more difficult. In other words, these names are catching squeeze type action, so you might get a quicker rip initially out of anything outside of tech. But for example, we saw a name like Intel see some solid flow Friday. And again, look at Intel. Intel just didn't top out. Intel's been in a decent breather for quite a bit, right? This is what you want to see. We talk about this all the time. You don't want to buy this up here now, for a trade, yeah, but you don't want to start initializing positions up here after all that sweeper activity has come in. That's ridiculous. So you're waiting for something like this, and when you see first signs of some decent action, if you were eyeing Intel, that's where you want to begin to look at it. They may be early. In other words, this doesn't mean it has to bounce like a Spalding from here. May trickle lower, may sit around, do nothing, but Friday was your confirmation, if you're using the flow that way, to start to look at Intel, as opposed to looking at Intel throughout this whole move, because there was no flow. There was zero. There was call buying. There was, flow in literal terms, but there was no aggressive wise guy activity, type of action that I'm looking for throughout this whole consolidation. Friday was the first day. All right, so you don't want to just use blanket statements and throw it out there. Like I said, for the majority of names that are overheated, okay, there may be some chop, there may be some pull, Okay, you should get, I guess the best way to look at it, you should get outperformance from the other stuff. All right, we spoke about steel, right? Okay, a lot of you guys who have been here every Saturday with me on this webinar, we've been talking about U.S. Steel for a while now, right? You guys remember down here when the activity really started to heat up, and remember how tough of a trade it was? Remember how we were saying, you just don't chase green, you know, wait for a pullback. If there's sweeper activity, look to buy that pullback. And it was just a grind higher. And look how long it's been grinding higher and then finally starting to loosen up here. Okay? Again, look, you know, after a huge move post-election, you know, U.S. Steel was a machine post-election. The stock has done nothing since topping out in March. You know, finally bottomed out and has been grinding higher nicely and, you know, starting to move out of this. You look at other names in the group where we're seeing flow, Steel Dynamics. Look at this base. Look at this consolidation. This is, again, this is not falling out of bed. You understand my point? This is just straight up consolidation. Chop. After a move like this, what normally happens is you get something, some formation like this. Doesn't have to be this long. These things were consolidating for a long time, but sometimes, a lot of times, the longer the consolidation, when they get out, the more of a rocket they are. All right, so the Steel Dynamics, seeing some decent sweeper activity. Looks like she's starting to get out here. Nucor has been catching a lot of size, not as much sweeper activity as I would like, but some big time size. And, you know, she's a little deeper in that consolidation. But you can see these all look alike. You know what I mean? They've been out of favor and ignored for so long. And it makes sense that if the smarter money out there doesn't want to chase everything else that the riffraff crowd is staring at day in, day out, you know, you guys saw me make the comment and post it on Twitter. I mean, as far as retail right now, if it's not Bitcoin or FANG, they tell you to go F yourself. They have zero interest. Zero. No interest. You know, that's how out of control it is. Bitcoin, FANG, nothing else. I run into people who, you know, want to talk market, and that's basically their trading style. What can you decide? Yeah, I trade Bitcoin, I trade FANG, that's all I trade. You know, so when you start to see that, you're overdue for some consolidation. They're going to refer to it as chop. Oh, I've been getting chopped up. You know, that's what they call it. But it's just normal consolidation and rotation and outperformance everywhere else. I saw somebody mention IBB. You know, we spoke about the VRX, the Teva a little bit earlier in this webinar. You know, we're seeing names across the board in IBB. IBB really hasn't even done anything special yet, right? You had this wash while everything was hot, still hovering around here, but underneath the hood selectively, there's some aggressive activity in biotechs. We've been talking about all that stuff continuously. VRX, Teva, to name a couple this morning. That GBT, which is going into a conference this weekend, has been a complete animal. Even this pig, HZNP, which is a grinder, looks like trying to get out here, but, you know, slowly grinding to the highest point it's been. BIIB, caught two really good-looking orders right into this sideways base. You know, nice little pop if you wanted the quick trade out of it, a little breather, and then a nice pop again on Friday. Oh, a lot of names. So you see they're spilling into everything. And how about the food names? The food names have been ridiculous. And, you know, you don't normally see aggressive activity in the food stuff, but they've been great trades. Wendy's, you guys know, further out, but it was aggressive activity. Nice little lift here. Just on Friday, Jack, more of trade type flow, but every time Jack has gotten to the bottom of this channel, catches sweeper activity. And literally that same day, if not a day or two later, you got a decent trade out of it. Jack caught it into the weakness at the open. Let me do a 5-minute. You'll probably see it better. So Jack had weakness here. Okay. Sweepers ate up this weakness in December's. And, that was a decent trade in just a day. This Papa John's, we have traded a couple times already. Freaking Papa John's. Sweepers here. You had this lift. And then what happens? Looking to break lows again, right? Normally these things just fall apart right at the seams. That day, sweepers came into the weakness. A lot of guys who played this Friday are out of it already because of the move. So basically everything as a trader, it's all there now. The tough part about some of these things are the options, okay? If you're looking to size up and you're looking to be quick at the same time, the liquidity is not there on the majority, a lot of these things. I wouldn't, not all of them, but a lot of these things, the liquidity is not there on the option side. All right, but if you're swing trading, we spoke about this. You could take the approach, put in what you're willing to lose, a lot less stress if you're looking to take a position. You could spread yourself out nicely, without getting too overextended or sizing up too much. And a lot of times when you size down, a lot less stress. You could trade with a lot clearer head. That's a decent approach. Or if you're an equities guy, you have no excuses. Like I'm trading the equity, and the majority, I've been day trading the equity, and I'm swing trading some calls further out on names I like. That's what I've been doing. So if any name's catching action in weeklies or front month, I'm day trading the equity. And if they continuously come in and gobble up a name, I'm taking for a swing a position of dated calls. An example, GBT, with that type of action was a must own. We spoke about that. Was a must own for me. And I've day traded the name a couple times. I had an equity position. I'm out of that because it's had a nice move. And now I'm sitting on March calls that I'm willing to go to zero with some decent time behind it. So that's my approach. That may not be your approach, but that's my approach. But this is where the flow has been signaling to us the hot spots of this market. Okay, this is how the flow, I use the flow to tell me, where to look. And even as a day trader, okay, the majority of the time I'm talking about swing trading because a lot of you guys are swing traders, but as a day trader, I think it's even more on point as far as an indicator. I'll give you an example. Last week, we saw a bounce in the FANG names, right? For me, if these names, if they don't catch action, sweeper activity, I don't even know what they're doing. Like, I'm never going to trade Facebook unless there's aggressive activity that day. Okay? And Facebook was one of the names that, was catching aggressive sweeper activity. They nailed this thing perfect. And, I'm being honest, I wasn't a fan of these names because, again, the flow is telling me to concentrate elsewhere. The better looking flow is telling me to look elsewhere. But you had a pull. You had aggressive activity, a lot of weekly stuff and front month stuff, but that's okay if you're looking for the bounce. And, that was a sick move in Facebook. Okay, what it does from here now is a different story. This is a whole different story. But as far as a trade, these things still can be traded like that, okay? But I was mentioning day trading, Facebook, if I come in the morning, the bell opens, okay, even though I'm looking elsewhere, I'm looking at other sectors, if Facebook sweepers are going to start to get aggressive right from the opening bell, okay, and Facebook's flattish or down, not gapping up huge, the flow's telling me that there's heat coming into Facebook right now. I want to be in that for the day. Okay, because that's telling me that's where the juice is, that's where the momentum is. And that's what we were seeing. We were seeing some of that as these things were bottoming out and bouncing. We saw CRM catch some action. You know what I mean? And again, a nice bounce. This CRM can come right back down to where it started. For me, it's got nothing to do with the flow. But the flow was telling me that there might be a bounce. They were a bit early. They came on this day initially. But CRM might see a bounce off the juice. And again, as a day trader, though, it's even easier because when you see them getting aggressive, all you're looking to do is get in the middle of that buying, because the buying itself will create momentum. That's basically my edge when I'm day trading off this stuff. I'm just looking to get in the middle of the heat. I'm not looking for them to be right on the bet. I'm just looking to take advantage of the momentum generated off their aggressive buying. All right, so that's how things are lining up now. We go into next week, and as we get closer to the end of the year, the holidays, volume thins out. What flow has been signaling for now, unless something changes, is that the smart money is looking towards the other things, okay? Trannies, steel, infrastructure, materials, they're all catching the better looking action. Prior to that, it was tech, semis, Baba, Facebook catching missiles, Micron, missile after missile after missile, right? That was where the action was. Now, you see a sweeper in this SUM, and you're like, whoa. I mean, that's a good looking order for this thing. That thing doesn't catch orders like that. And it's a materials name. Like, this was one of the first material names to catch action. So this was getting your eyes on it, on the rotation, even earlier than we normally would have. Right? This SUM caught action off this pull. But at the time, again, like I said, most people, I tweeted something out on this SUM action. I think it was the night the night it caught action. In other words, the day it caught action that night or the next day, I tweeted out how aggressive the order was a big order. No interest on Twitter. No interest. They don't give a shit. You think they give a shit about this? But that's where the flow can be an asset. That's where the flow's an edge. It's telling you where the money's going and helps you avoid getting chopped up. And that's why I love consolidation. Like I tell you guys, flow doesn't tell me much when the stock is moving. When a stock is doing nothing and it starts to catch aggressive buying, that's where I have the edge, I feel, when nobody wants it. Even you got names, guys, that remember Buff. Do you guys remember that Buff? Look at these moves. Like, see, I'm an equities guy. I know a lot of you option guys, you buy price line calls, and because the thing moves, a couple $100, you get your nice move on the calls. But for me, price line's $10,000 a share, for Christ's sake. A 40-point move is guts. You get a $20 stock go to 30 in 2 weeks. And that's a big move. So that's where we're at. Whether you like it or not, if you're interested in what the flow is trying to tell you, that's what it's telling us. Okay, keep an eye on where the action's going. It's likely going into names, and the beauty of it is, like, we'll see names we never heard of before, and we're so interested to find out what they do because, oh, there's another material name. I never heard of this one. This thing never catches action. So we're like kids in a candy shop, those of us who enjoy this type of flow, because you find hidden value, hidden gems. And that's where you can have an edge. Like I said, it's tough to get an edge in a micron that's up 100% this year. You know, it's tough to find an edge there now. So we'll go over, let me show you guys some of the Friday stuff so you get an idea. All right, here's some of the Friday action. There was a lot of action Friday. Ton of action in these things Friday. So this is not even going to do it justice. I handpicked some of, the action that caught my eye. We spoke about this Jack, the December 105 calls. Okay. They may have even flipped some, to be honest. You could see the difference in what they paid. You know, they 70 cents initially. And you can see the stock was 100 and change at the time. And I showed you guys the move in that Jack. Closed at 104.57. So, you know, big move off the action already. Let me blow this up so you guys. Oh, then I can't go back. What a pain in the ass. Hold on. All right, so that's the Jack sweeper activity. There were several of these throughout the morning. AKS, I'm not a big fan of it. It's a cheap stock, but you know what? I mean, if steel's going to move, it's probably going to drag it higher. That's starting to see an uptick in flow. Saw a little bit of flow prior to that. Friday saw an uptick. Another name is that ArcelorMittal MT, which has looked good. Slower mover. But, you know, this name has caught action in the past and has grinded nicely. Just it's a slower mover. You know, as well as this AKS, it's a cheap stock. You know, it's a cheap stock. The best action in steel are the three, Steel Dynamics, X, and Nucor. That has been the best, action-wise. All right, so you got AKS there. MAC, they've been buying this name for quite a bit. They actually had to roll out some big-time size on this thing. This caught news. I think Third Point took a stake in them. That's this here. So they was buying throughout all the late summer. I think it was late, like August-ish, all throughout. Then you caught news, Third Point. Then catches a big bet, big orders. Now you got Third Point involved. Where am I? Sorry about that. Here we go. 10,000 March 75 calls. This was a block, but a big $1 million block. XLE Energy is another group. We haven't really seen, you know, energy has fared okay and the names have looked good. We haven't seen that all out Uzi sweeper type activity in the energy names. They've been extremely selective there. You know, one you hear me talk about because it's one of the few that caught some good action, this CRC, California Resources, Schlumberger, which was already a nice trade for some. Now this thing continuously up, down. But there's been some decent buying further out, March, April. So this thing could be both traded and tucked away. But we haven't seen that all-out aggressive buying in where they hit up everything in energy. Maybe that's still to come. You know, it's going to be an interesting January, especially if they let these FANG and tech names teeter out here. If they let them just chop around here, I think January could be really interesting as far as the rotation that we're seeing taking place right now. If FANG grinds to new highs while the rest of the stuff is performing well, I'm not trying to predict what can happen in markets, but I think there's a good chance we can see a correction. Because now they can take down everything because everything has rallied. You understand? Prior to that, they couldn't. So if it remains what we're seeing right now, it'll make an interesting January for the rotation. So XLE, you had some size March buying. March 72.5 calls, 2 big orders there, 2 big sweeps. Here's a name to keep an eye on. Monday, I traded it on Friday, made a little bit of money, but I'll probably look at it Monday again. Momo, some of these Chinese names, this is just squeeze. This is just squeeze here. All right, but you can see, again, correction already, and we're starting to see some small sweeper activity to end the week here. I think it was Thursday and Friday. So Monday morning, if this thing is flattish, if it's weak, even better. There's some sweepers coming in. I'm going to take it for a spin for the day. For swing trading, you can, again, you're looking for that quick squeeze there. You may see even more than that, but that's basically what you're playing for out of this. Momo, here's some of the action. Caught 2 bets. Here, Jan 12th, 25.5 calls. All right, 900 of them. So that's been the month too. Jan 12th. So that's a name to keep an eye on early next week. Teva, again, this doesn't even do it justice. This what I have here. Ton of action in this Teva. December's, then they're rolling out of December's. They're going into December 22nd. Jans have been annihilated. Just a ton of action in Teva last couple of weeks looking for a squeeze. And VRX as well. CRR, interesting action there. You can see December 10 calls, decent size. This name doesn't catch that type of size. Then they sold the Jan 9 puts. And some more December 10 calls. They came back. Oh, this was the second time. They hit it for 50 cents. And then they hit it for 55 cents. This is what she looks like. You guys know this name? Carbo Ceramics. Oop, hold on 1 second. One second. Yeah, energy, right? This is energy. And, yeah, a lot of these names, I've never heard of that are starting to get sweeper activity. But, again, same setup there, Death, bottoms out, starting to, the right side of that U formation off a little bit of a breather. So something to keep an eye on. Something to keep an eye on in this name. Again, that's notable activity. That's the most important part, notable activity. I got this, there's somebody out here who's screaming for me to talk about Apple. You understand what I'm saying, though? You understand what I'm saying? Nobody gives a shit about anything else. I can't say nobody. I'm not, I know a lot of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, but the majority of people, and listen, they've had success in it, right? They've had a lot of success in these names. That's all they want to know. That's all they want to trade. I get it. But that's why I think what's taking place now could be a big part of this rally continuing. What would the riffraff crowd do if this market has another leg higher here and FANG underperforms? You know what I mean? You talk about keeping a lid on bullish sentiment. That's one way to do it. And then, some big ETF action too. This EFA, March 70 calls, EEM, caught a monster order. So we're seeing some big ETF action as well. Last week, we saw some interesting SPY action. If you guys remember, most of you who are members know there's been some of that cheap, aggressive sweeper activity in the cheap, out of the money SPY calls. On Thursday, we saw them play, what were they, the 270s for December 29th, something like that. So there's been some crazy-looking SPY flow as well, speculating on further upside. All right, they're cheap, so it's speculation-type money, but some cheap stuff. Yeah, somebody mentioned it's CBI. That's another one. That's another one. These moves are half decent for a $15 number. But you can see the lift here actually was getting out Friday, a little profit taking at the end of the day. A lot of these names, infrastructure in general, have just been, enormous. Let me show you let me get to the board. I'll be able to show you some stuff. Hold on. And then I'll get to your names, because I know that's what you're most interested in. But, and not to make excuses, you see where a lot of the majority of traders who do not find success off wise guy activity, you see the reasons why though, right? Because they ignore the action they should be paying attention to. They ignore the stuff that the flow is trying to scream at them to pay attention to. And they're only paying attention to, almost non-event flow in names that they like. And when they don't find success, they're not blaming themselves for liking those names. They're blaming the, little bit of flow that they saw in that name. I'm being honest. That's where a lot of people who try to get a gauge on flow, and spin their wheels, that's their main problem. The banks, we didn't even talk about again because they've been on fire. Let me talk about the banks for a second. I think, my opinion, now, again, you have everybody talking about the rotation, okay? The banks were a play when Wells Fargo was getting tattooed in this sideways doing nothing type action. You remember that, right? Wells Fargo missiles into these lows. Ramp. Pullback, they bought that. Ramp. Pullback, sideways action. Annihilation. There was Wells Fargo call sweepers every single day throughout this whole sideways. Every single day. So obvious that it would smack you upside the head. You may not have wanted to pay attention to it because Wells Fargo is probably the worst bank right now, right, in the mainstream media. Nobody wants to own it. But sweepers wanted to own it. Incredible action there. Look at this. Okay, this is Wells Fargo. Now, there have been many bank rallies where Wells Fargo doesn't catch a bet. Similar to like Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs doesn't catch, or hasn't even caught much action. Some small weekly speculative type bets. That's all. But Wells Fargo has, many of bank rallies has been in that ballpark. Not this one. Not this one. Look at how far I scrolled back here. Okay, this is calls and puts, by the way. Okay, and you can see how many lightning bolts, which is most important. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's sweeper activity. Okay, the blocks are blocks, these Tetris blocks. So you can see how many lightning bolts. But look at this. I scrolled back. We're still at the end of November here. And that's why this thing looks the way it does. And she was a big laggard. So my point being is, up here now, it gets difficult. It gets more difficult now. This is where you want to be looking here. You want to get in here. Okay, give yourself a decent amount of time. I mean, if you're going to roll the dice in weeklies here and run it to the last day of expiration and hope you get lucky, I mean, that's your prerogative. But if you wanted to go out to next year, Jan, Feb, March, there were some ridiculous orders in March, April calls in Wells Fargo. You gave yourself ample amount of time to not even stress it if there even wasn't, this move came quicker than expected. And not only that, now you have room to let it go if you want. Or sell and leave a piece and let it go because you have a ton of time. So if you're in the Wells Fargo, that's great. Okay. If you still want to play banks or trade banks, I think Wells Fargo should be number one on your list. All right. So if you're looking to trade banks in and out, I think that's basically where the trade is on these things. If you see Wells Fargo down and sweepers come in, you got an opportunity for a quick trade there. But as far as catching the big move now, you're late to the party. You're late to the party. All right, so that goes for all the banks, except, honestly, I would say Goldman, only because it hasn't caught any real action yet. Now, Goldman always never catches as much action as Bank of America, Citi, and the rest of them. It's kind of like in Wells Fargo camp, okay? But when it does, you see, like exactly like the Wells Fargo, but you could see some big-time bets. Like I saw, there was one sweep, 10,000, 20,000 contracts. Like when they want it, they hit it hard. And this Goldman is the only one I would eye for that. But unless I see the action, I wouldn't chase this. I think the banks right now are just a trade on weakness. Let me show you Goldman so you could get an idea. All right, so here you got a December. Oh, here, yeah, is that the list? That's the list bet. See that? I don't even have to go anywhere. That's the list bet in Goldman. Decent bet. You had some small weekly stuff. So here you had a December buyer. Look where the price was then. Hold on. Let me do some John Madden. $239.26. It wasn't even sweeper activity. And then you had Jan's here, but that's back in September, geez. So, the size, when it does catch real action, there's some decent size, and it can catch a good-looking sweeper when it does catch action. But there hasn't been action there. All right, and you can see that bet, where was it? 220 something. So that bet is over here somewhere, right? Oh no, November, over here somewhere. So yeah, that's the only bank I would keep an eye on for some good looking action. And the reason why is you could get outperformance there. You understand? Even though the banks as a whole you're chasing, you can get outperformance like we're seeing in the Wells Fargo. So even if the banks pull, Goldman, if there's sweeper activity there, may pull less, may actually even be higher on days the banks pull. So also you got KRE, okay, which is the regionals, which I never trade, so I don't even know too many of them, Key and those guys, catching some ridiculous wood, this KRE. Yeah, same thing here. Breaking out of a long consolidation. Let me show you guys. I posted it on Twitter. You guys probably seen it. So again, this is the regional bank ETF. Look at the size of these things. What is this? How do I get this off now? Oh, there we go. All right, so look, 230, 300, sweeper for 166. These are smaller, 800, a million. This is all recent action here. So the regionals might be a place too that can outperform. We got to start paying close attention to some of the individual names there. We're not, a lot of us just rarely trade these names. Yeah, RF, Jim is mentioning, that's another regional I've heard of. Key. They all look the same. They all look the same. KRE, Jim is asking what expiration. They've been buying almost a little bit of everything, as far as I remember. These are Jans. These are end of December, Jim, 12/29. This was just a small weekly bet. These are Decembers. That's the big bet. The two big bets, the initial bets, the $1 million blocks, were Decembers. Look at this one. That was at 50, 50, 55 and $56 on this KRE. Got up to 61. You know, this thing doesn't move like that too. But yeah, definitely something to eye in flow, Jim. You know what I mean? If we see, we got to pay attention to these regional bank names now when they catch action, where a lot of times we just ignore it. So maybe out of flow, we catch a couple of laggards, you know what I mean, that haven't really caught fire yet, or just about to catch some heat. So I think that's why we got to pay attention to that. All right, so that's my opinion on the banks as far as what I would do. Again, you can still trade it or sweeper activity for just a trade, but as far as initializing positions up here, you could get away with it, right? We've seen it many times. You could get away with it, but you don't want to get in the habit. You don't want to get used to doing that, especially out of flow. The edge and flow is when no one's looking. They're giving us a heads up of where everyone's going to be looking. You know, that's the edge of flow. Now, everybody's eyeing banks. I retweeted, somebody sent me an article out of Barron's, all the strategists, you know, on there, buy financials. You know, they just hated them. They just hated these banks literally 2 weeks ago. They all want them, you know. So, but again, I like the material space. I think the materials infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of that stuff. That could be a group. You know, you're hearing mumblings about an infrastructure plan, Trump or whatever the hell they're doing. You know, that was one of the catalysts on Friday. But we were seeing sweeper activity in these things prior. You know, like I mentioned, that SUM, that's a materials play. You know, that was, what is that, 2 weeks ago now? That was literally down here. You know, but I'll tell you what, and Jim, Jim just mentioned it. This VMC can catch bazookas. I'm talking about size orders. When they want this thing can catch cannons. So this is one to keep an eye on, in my opinion, flow-wise. And you talk about doing nothing. Look at this. And, you know, another thing we were talking about, in 2007, right, the last leg of that rally, all these type of names are what almost went like parabolic-like before you know what happened after that. But the last stage, the last leg of that rally in 2007 was all this stuff. I remember people, I mentioned this Friday to members, I remember I was a broker at the time, and there were brokers, they were chasing Ingersoll Rand, IR. That's what they were chasing. I kid you not. Okay? They weren't chasing some hot tech name. They were chasing this. They were chasing all these big blue chip industrial components. Let me see if I could, let's go to 5 year. Yeah, so right before this, see this? That's the 2008 rollover. You could see, and it doesn't even do it justice. This was this whole move here. Off a correction, whoop. And then that was the end. Yeah, Deere, you see the move on Deere? I feel bad because there were a couple members who had this Deere nailed, and they got shaken out. They made a little bit of money. They wanted to hold it longer term, but they were sized up a little too much, and they got shaken out. The Deere, you're not going to believe me if I tell you, they nailed the lows here. Let me see if I can show you so you don't think I'm bullshitting you. Let's see. Let me go to all calls here. I could, right here, right? Yep. Can you guys make that out? 9/7, September 7th, December calls. So they're still live if they're in them. Oop, oh, God. December calls. Look at the size of these things. Okay? So probably $1.5 million in premium. They bought the December 115s when the stock was a little over 115. $115 in September. Yeah, see? Lowe's nailed. And look at that move. And you're probably saying, how did they get shaken out? You can't make it out on here, but there was a downgrade that looked worse than it looks on this chart. I kid you not. And they just took the profit off the table. That's so you understand, like, this is 115 to 150. Now September, okay? That's when they caught about September, October, November, December. And we're not even, we're in December now. But I'm saying that's 3 months goes by like that. That's not that far out for a swing trade. And you're talking about a hit, right? I mean, that's a hit in a well-known name. This is no bullshit name. Yeah, now deer, you can't do anything here. You're 100% right. This deer is gone. But again, we're seeing it in the CSX, the UNPs, all that stuff. And we should see more, like we just mentioned, the Vulcan materials. This is the stuff to keep an eye on here. Okay, this is the stuff to keep an eye on. All right, so let me get a couple of your names and a couple of your questions, even questions on flow. If you have some questions on flow, let me know. Anything. There's no such thing as a dumb question. All right, it's the only way you learn anything in this game. You have to ask questions. And you could even throw some names at me if you're interested to see if there was any recent activity or any of that jazz. Hold on, let me get all right, Rustin's saying TRN, that's a beauty. And Rustin's asking, is it too far gone? We were wrestling with this question just recently, Rustin, because some good-looking action came into this name. I think it may need to rest, but I think there's more here. And here's the problem. This is not a new name, okay? Even though the sector right now is hot, this was a name they really came after aggressively back here. It caught some news of a potential buyout, then came back, and then the flow started up again. So now you got a little bit, you're a little extended here to where this might need to chop around and breathe a little bit. But I think, Rustin, what you can do is, if you give yourself enough time, you understand? If you give yourself enough time, I think you'd be a lot better off in this thing. One, it's not a big mover unless it catches news. That's one. And two, because you're a little late, it's not the sweet spot, as I would like to say. With time, you can sleep better at night. So I would put it this way. If you like the name, Rustin, if you like the name, I think you can trade it off the flow. If you just want to trade off the flow itself, it's a little more difficult, if that makes sense to you. Like, if you like this TRN, and the flow that's come in was really good looking too, then you can pull the trigger there. But I think if you're just trading off flow, you're better off looking at other stuff, waiting for other names. By the way, there's another name, Lumber Liquidators. You guys know that. That caught action recently. Dead, has been dead. Caught a good-looking order. Lumber Liquidators. Right now, sometimes you can't think of the top of your head. There's so many names in this whole space. You guys remember this USG drywalls? You remember this thing? Look at this thing. Construction name, drywalls, they do. Look at this. No one's looking at this thing. This thing caught, I'm telling you, good-looking action. This thing doesn't ever catch action. Good-looking action, call it $30. Some even cheaper than that. You don't look at it in a couple of weeks, boom, it's approaching 40. So there's potential big winners there. Kevin saying, take a peek at the defensive sector. Yeah, well, that's been a great group, Kevin. I'll tell you, what was the name in the news? Investigation play type. Oh, LLL. That quarterback Friday. LLL. Did I type in the right symbol? Oh, yeah, here it is. That quarterback on Friday, Kevin. So somebody mentioned to me the reason for this, I guess, is this a poll? This that looks like a beautiful little flag there. There was some they're getting investigated or some shit like that. Here's the bet on Friday. Jan 195s. It was a block, so not a sweeper, but 437 grand. So I don't know, Kevin, if that's a name you've been eyeing in the group. Other than that, you know, there's been flow here and there. They don't catch a lot of flow. That's the bad part of that group. But that sector's been on fire. That sector's been on fire. Was that avionics? Fighter jets. That's what this LLL is, huh? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, even it's a good-looking, good-looking name. Look at this thing. So the good thing is you got a little breather here, maybe off that negative news. But somebody is making a bet that news is nothing to worry about. You know, you can see here back 1121 caught a smaller bet at $188. So a good $5 cheaper for December. And then before that, oh, this is going back. Look at this. That's after the election. Look at that sweep. You see that? That sticks out like a sore thumb in these names. So you had basically a Jan sweeper, this coming Jan. This is back in the election, okay? And over a $250,000 sweep when the stock was 157. So you had $200. So, but there's a big block here if you're interested in that name. What else we got? Boeing is an animal. Oh, Kevin, what are you talking about? Bank of America? Oh, Boeing, yeah. Boeing doesn't catch much action. Small sweepers, a lot of times they're just playing some front month, looking to take advantage of momentum, or maybe news or chatter. But this thing has been a monster. This is a monster. Look at this thing. You know what's funny? Remember when Trump, after the election, bad-mouthed Boeing and it actually sold off? Do you guys remember that? Like it was right after the election? That was the buying opportunity of a lifetime, I think, at that time. Like right after the election. Crazy. All right, what other names? I'm scrolling down here, so I'm not just handpicking. All right, a couple of decent names here. Biotech names, there's been several. All the names that you mentioned have seen activity. Celgene, the most recent, April's, caught a couple April sweepers, had a nice pop Friday in Celgene. Also, Celgene caught April sweepers right into the blood right here. Okay, so there's been some further out action in Celgene. That's probably a smart move because you see what happened here. But April has been the target. They hit it here. And then you had April sweepers, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. A couple of guys traded in the room just this last week. Another name you mentioned, NKTR is one of the biggest winners of flow this year. They were buying up leaps in NKTR like they were going out of style throughout this whole entire consolidation. This has been the roughest trip that ended up so profitable, it's unbelievable. Like, look at what you had to sit through in this NKTR. Look at this sell-off here. Can you imagine you sitting in this? It finally looks like it's going to highs. Then this thing washes out completely. Looks like it's going to zero. And then rebounds, and now the action has picked up, and look at this thing. Some more leap buying, too, by the way. But, you know, this thing's gone now. But yeah, had a lot of flow throughout this whole long consolidation in NKTR. Incredible move. And what was the other biotech you mentioned? I just lost you. Hold on. Celgene, NKTR. I lost the other one when I'm sorry, but nice biotech flow. Jim is asking about Cure. Cure caught 2 bets recently. They paid up on Friday. And I think they're going to be at the conference this weekend, Jim. So here's the action in Cure. You have 1026, so the end of October, caught an April bet, size April bet. That was around $15. Then, oh, this was the big bet. On the 21st of November, July 20s, 800 grand. That's when the stock was under 15. And then they just paid up here for Jan's another $500,000. The stock is $3 higher, 2 and change, and they dumped in another $500,000. So, yeah, and somebody mentioned that they were, yeah, they're blocks, but I mean, listen, if you're not worrying necessarily about momentum right now, then, you know, in these type of names, blocks can be looked at. You know, what the blocks don't, where I pretty much ignore a lot of the blocks are in the bigger names, Jim. The bigger names, you know? The big names, when they catch blocks, you know, I'm not impressed. But, you know, under the radar biotech, you got to pay attention to any action not tied to stock. You want, by the way, you guys know about that Sage, right? Like we can't ever, none of us can be in this. None of us can be in this Sage. I mean, it's incredible. Look at the size of these Sage blocks, by the way, Jim. Look at this. 3 mil, 900, 400, 850. Oh my God. How's this guy feeling? This November guy. In the month of November, he put in about $5 million in December calls when the stock was 61 and then 83. 61 and 83. Those of you who don't know what happened to this stock, she's trading at 170. So this guy hit it 61. He hit it down here. So he caught both gaps. Is that nuts? In the month of November here, he caught this gap, and then he caught this gap. Unbelievable. I don't know, honestly, Bob, it's amazing how some of these guys get away with this shit. They find loopholes, you know, if they own the name in the past. Here there was data, so unless they prove he had, you know, what do you have, inside info on the data? You got to prove that. That's not that easy. A lot of these guys get away with this shit more than you would think. John saying, since you were mentioning blocks, what do you make of the $3 and $2 million blocks in EM? Yeah, John, I mentioned them a little earlier. Me personally, I like to pay attention to the sweeper activity in ETFs. Like I mentioned to Jim, in the bigger names, I don't get excited about blocks. A lot of times the blocks are tied. That's why. You know, even we see a lot of the blocks that are tied. You know, they get reported that way. Sometimes we don't. So you got to take blocks in the bigger names with a grain of salt, and I'll leave it at that. So, you know, you could put it, the whole bull of wax right now, John, is we're seeing bullish activity pretty much everywhere. I mean, even like Brazil, you know, we saw that type of action into this weakness. We're even seeing some more Brazil here, you know, so there's bullish activity all over the place, and it's been that way. But the problem, John, is in ETF land, I mean, you can't make much out of the blocks because there's a lot of equity replacement going on. You know, if you own, let's say, 300,000 of EEM, you know, what a lot of institutions are doing is dumping that and then buying $3 million worth of calls. You know what I mean? So I would take it with a grain of salt in the big guys, because a lot of them are tied. There's a lot of stock replacement going on out there, a ton, and that's why I'm being honest with you guys. A lot of the blocks, if it's not a sweeper, you know, in the bigger stuff, it doesn't pique my interest. There's enough sweeper activity for me to just concentrate on that. But I'm sweeper biased, you know? So maybe you're talking to the wrong guy. Now, again, it's in the bigger names. The smaller names, a lot of times we'll know when they're tied. The stock gets reported, you know? Or you'll see a huge block go off. You'll see it right on your chart. But, you know, like names like EEM, you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that. You know, these things trade. EFA, like for example, EEM and EFA, they can catch sweeper activity, a ton of it. So if sweepers want it, they're not shy there. I've seen this EFA get swept like Bank of America. Cam is saying, I'm new here. What's the difference between a sweeper and a block and then the other types? I mean, basically, in simple English, you could do this one. You could go to wallstreetjesus.com, okay? Click on the strategy section, and the first little short blog article, you click on that. All right, there's other articles here that you may find useful, how I use all this stuff, everything we speak about here. But in simple English, just the way to tell you something, a sweeper is an aggressive bet. It's an aggressive order. In other words, the player is sweeping multiple exchanges to get a fill on an order. So it stresses urgency. The player's more concerned about getting filled than what price he's getting filled at. You understand? Where a lot of times the blocks are negotiated. It's a negotiated price. Or like I mentioned, a block will replace equity. So in other words, somebody's selling stock and replacing that position with a block of calls. You know? So the reason why I focus solely on sweeper activity primarily is because it shows that degenerate instinct we all have as human beings. You know, if you felt really confident about something, right? If your uncle comes over to you at Thanksgiving and says, listen, you got to buy this sage. They're going to get FDA approval. Just trust me. You got to buy this sage Monday morning right at the opening bell. Okay? What are you going to do? Are you going to go out there negotiating a price? Are you going to sit on the bid and hope to get filled? No. If you have the resources, if you're a pro, you're going to aggressively sweep multiple exchanges to get as much as you can possibly get. And you're going to continue to sweep until you run out of money, right? If you're that confident on it. You don't care what price you're going to get filled at. So that's why, I concentrate on that type of action. Now, one order in a active name can mean anything. So that's why there's a certain behavior behind that sweeper activity that I pay attention to that stresses to me more urgency than others. And again, we go back to some of the top action we've seen in the past. Most recent is this GBT. Okay, there was a block that went off, and it was a pretty hefty block. But I'll be honest with you guys, without the sweeper activity that came in on that GBT, that would have been like the Sage block for me. Now maybe that's bad on my part, but I wouldn't have been as excited. The sweepers in GBT confirmed to me that somebody out there was making an aggressive bet, right? If you're making an aggressive bet, you're not replacing your equity with calls. You're not selling anything. You're not rolling. You're buying aggressively. So that's the method behind all this madness. You know, I do, we do, every day. You know, basically that's what I do for a living. I come in every day and I'm trying to sift through flow on a day-to-day basis, minute-to-minute basis, looking for the most aggressive activity in the market. And a lot of times they'll signal rotation. You know, they'll signal momentum in a name that hasn't had any momentum. And that's where the edge is in this. John saying, when they sweep, do they pay above the ask price? If yes, it all depends. It all depends. A lot of times they'll sweep multiple exchanges and take out all offers. So let's say across, like there was a JP Morgan sweeper about a month or so ago, and he swept each and every exchange. I think all 15 exchanges. Think about that. 15 exchanges this player swept in milliseconds and took out every offer that was out there. Every offer that was out there. You know, where we don't have the capability of doing that. So it all depends. And John, they sweep bids. Not just offer, they sweep bids. We see put sellers sweep bids. You know? So it's again, they're just looking, they see a price and they want it right away. That's basically, in simple English, what it comes down to. And how's the market make it doing, Jim and saying in JP Morgan? But here's the thing, guys, okay? Here's the thing. The reason why I day trade, I mean, my bread and butter, yeah, I swing trade selectively, but my bread and butter has been day trading because as an intraday indicator on these things, and, you know, again, I'm talking my book here, but there's no more powerful intraday momentum indicator out there than sweeper activity. I'm sorry, there's not. There's no indicator out there that when it triggers, you're going to see instant momentum, a stock come to life, volume swell, bids lifted. You know what I mean? There's nothing that comes close as far as in real time. And the reason for it, what Jim is saying, the market makers, what do you think? These guys are stupid. They don't want this on their books. When somebody sharp is aggressively sweeping a position, the market maker has to make a market in it, right? That doesn't mean he has to hold on to it. So he immediately will hedge off that risk. Immediately. And that's what creates momentum in itself, right? That's what happens. So, you know, let's take a name from Friday, the Jack in the Box. Okay? You have somebody out there sweeping December calls. They expire next week. Okay? There's one sweeper. You know, you see a spike and the volume pickup. Okay? Then he comes back, he sweeps again. Then he comes back and sweeps again. Almost every single time that's going to create momentum in the underlying. Because that market maker is hedging off that risk. Word starts to spread that there's a sharp pro aggressively sweeping Jack in the Box and the market maker's hedging off risk. That will snowball into further momentum. So the question is not if aggressive sweeper activity creates momentum, is how much momentum will it create? That's what it comes down to. And that's why I love day trading off of it, because if there's, and we see it in all the names, okay? It's just Facebook, you can't expect momentum off one small sweeper in Facebook. But don't be mistaken. If somebody's aggressively sweeping Facebook, there's going to be a ton of momentum. We day trade Facebook all the time off multiple sweeper activity. And you can almost sense it happening. You see, I'll post, or the board will hit, you get a small sweeper in Facebook, okay? We see one small sweeper. Then a minute later, another sweep in Facebook. Then another sweep in Facebook. Then another sweep in Facebook. You almost sense it. Okay, here we go. You know what I mean? Here we go. You're gonna have a push high on Facebook. Now, if they continue to sweep, that's where you get these sustained moves, throughout periods of the day in these names. But almost always you see some sort of momentum. And the trick is, as a day trader, to get in and be able to pull the plug if that momentum disappears or runs out. You know what I mean? That's what basically you have to get to as a day trader and find success and be profitable with trading or sweeper activity. But that's an easy thing. That's on you. That's just you being able to pull the plug and admit that you're wrong when you're wrong. It's not a question of if. In other words, if there's sweeper activity that comes into a name like Jack in the Box, okay, and you think there could be momentum created from it, Jack in the Box lifts a bit, okay, but then we get Comey news, okay, or Trump news, and the market's heavy, and it's taking down everything with it, including Jack, and the momentum runs out in the Jack. You got to be able to say, all right, you know what? I lost that little bit of profit. I was looking for more. I'm stopping myself at a break even, a small loss. No harm done. Rather than writing things down, relying on you being right all the time. But more than not, it's just a matter of how much momentum is there. Sometimes you step on a big winner. Sometimes, stock lifts and goes sideways for a period of time. It all depends, and that's markets. There's other things that factor in. That's why you can't be right all the time, But yeah, and as a swing trader, it's just on a different time frame. That's all it is. It's on a different time frame. Like Jim is mentioning the Roku, which you see sweeper activity. You see a name has short interest. It's you don't have to be too market savvy to know, wow, if there's some momentum going to be created off this sweeper activity, it might trigger some short covering. So that's, again, these are all the little things on your end that you're looking at, but that's the best way to look at it, I think, using this information as an indicator. And I think when you do that, it keeps you out of trouble. When you rely on the actual bet itself working out, that's where you get into trouble. That's where you get into trouble. That's when you never want to take profit, right? You want to hold it all the way to expiration, like it's going to run all the way into that Friday expiration without a pullback. You don't want to stop yourself out when you're wrong. So, but as far as a momentum indicator, there's nothing. If you know one more powerful than this, please share. Because I've been in this game 20 plus years. There hasn't been anything remotely close to it. What did I miss here? A couple of questions. Kevin, lots of action VRX yesterday. Now this stock is breaking out. Like most of the stuff, Kevin, it's a little late. It's late. So I think it's a name you could day trade. You understand? If you see the activity as aggressive as, like a lot of us, I'm embarrassed to admit it, we scalped it in the morning. We should have held it the whole day, but you know what I mean? It's something you could get in the middle of the buying. But at this point, you need a breather. You need a breather. You know, this you're chasing now. Yeah, I don't know if you heard me mention earlier, this action started right before earnings and then hasn't stopped since. It seems like every day they're buying VRX. So again, to find success, the type of success you want off this stuff, you can't be afraid of being early. You can't. The time to look to buy these things is when you least want to buy it, when nobody wants to buy it, when nobody's looking. But sweepers are looking. You understand? That's the most important ingredient. Nobody's interested. That's a good thing, but the pros are interested. And they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're aggressively buying. So, and, you know, that's when I started to see the light in these things. Because I was a big, initially when I got into this game, I was a big momentum chaser, breakout chaser. Now I'm the total opposite. Now I'm the total opposite. I like, you know, in regards to sweeper activity, I want dead wood. The more dead a name looks, the better, because that's my edge. Sweepers are telling me she's going to come to life. Okay? Or again, the way to look at it is higher probability that it's going to come to life. Right now, the sweeper activity is just telling me the momentum is continuing, right? That's what sweepers are telling me here. VRX is still bullish. There's a bigger edge in where, like I said, it goes from bearish to bullish, or neutral is some of the best ones. Neutral to bullish. What I do? I lost the questions. Oh, here they are. If that makes sense, you know. And listen, I know, Kev. It goes against a lot of what you hear and are taught about in this market. But the more and more people you talk to have been in this game a long time, they don't like to chase, like to buy dips, like to buy consolidations, you know? Yeah. And Ani's saying, like, you know, an example, CBI, a dead name, you know, catches action, comes to life. And then you see, as now more and more people are talking about names like CBI, what do they want to do? They want to chase here now. And that's good for us if you're getting in early. But it's a lot more difficult to know when these extended names, when the momentum, it can run out at any given point in time. You know, again, as a day trader, as a swing trader, that's the toughest part of this game. You know, and Wells Fargo is a great example. A great example. Again, when Wells Fargo caught those two bull missiles, that was the worst possible time to be bullish Wells Fargo, according to the retail crowd, according to CNBC, according to Jim Cramer. I remember like it was yesterday. I had CNBC here. It was a quiet day, flow-wise. CNBC on in the background, and Jim Cramer is bashing Wells Fargo to death. Warren Buffett's going to hate it. This is this. They should be embarrassed. Why would anybody want to own this stock? You couldn't make it up. Okay? How negative the noise was on WFC that day. And literally, almost like sweepers were listening to Jim Cramer. I kid you not. I'm not making this shit up. All of a sudden, whoop, a missile whistles in. March calls. I think March or April, one of the other. Okay, whistles in, like $1 million sweep in Wells Fargo. I'm like, holy shit! So we're talking about it in the room. A couple minutes later, whoop, another one. into blood, new lows, ready to fall off a cliff. Yeah, and then that's all she wrote. But, so similar to like the VRX cab, you don't want to chase this here, right? That's a perfect segue to VRX. You don't want to chase this here. You need a breather. Okay? You need a breather. Because now everybody wanted to look at WFC. And they got screwed. Okay? Then what happened? Sweepers hit it again in here. Same thing. Breather. You got it. This took a little bit longer. What'd they do? They swept the living daylights out of this thing every single day. And now she's gone. I mean, this, if I was to draw an example, again, not all work out like this. That's unfortunate, but this is the best example. This is the best example. Another good example, but it wasn't nearly the action like the Wells Fargo. CMG, right? CMG never caught you. We were talking about this. I just got deja vu. CMG never catches a sweeper. Ever catch a sweeper activity. Never. At its worst point possible, somebody comes in and sweeps sharp in the money calls. Okay? So no, not speculative in type action where somebody's picking up calls for 10 cents, hoping for a squeeze, laying big wood in CMG that never catches sweeper activity. And you can almost sense it. Like we're in the room at the time in the steam room. I remember telling myself, I said, listen, right now my job off that order, because I know a lot of people look at this name and trade this name, is to stress how noteworthy that sweeper was. I remember telling myself that. As ugly as this name is, I got to stress to members that this is a good-looking order here. This is no run-of-the-mill type sweeper activity. Guess what? Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to make a play on it. Nobody wanted to tail it. And these are members who watch the flow, just like myself, on a day-to-day basis and trade off it. Nobody wanted to touch the thing. And, you see where she is now, But the funny thing is they were trying to catch bounces prior to that and got burnt. That's why they were so reluctant. They were trying to catch bounces without flow prior to that and got run over. But again, that's, I'm just bringing the example that the biggest edge out of all this, and you've heard me say it like a broken record, is when names are dead, nobody has an interest, even at times when they look their worst. That's where the real edge is, when the smart money is aggressively buying them. When a name already looks bullish and is catching action, it's supposed to catch action. You understand? It can create momentum short term, and you can look to take advantage of it. But longer term, you really don't have an edge. When Facebook goes up every day and you see Facebook buying, what's your edge? Everybody likes Facebook. Everybody wants to buy Facebook. You didn't need the flow to tell you that. So Karen's saying, isn't that your tell to go in big? Easier said than done, Karen. That's the problem. Easier said than done. And here's the trick, okay? When you say big, it's not your cue to go in big. It's your cue to make a play. You understand? Because here's the thing. No matter how good the sweeper activity may look, it always has a shot to be wrong. Why can't that guy be wrong? Why? What's going to happen if there's an exogenous event out there and the whole market gets hit over the head? You understand? So there's always the risk of being wrong. You're never going to play in this game and be at a state where, I feel 100% confident in this. will not be a loser. You understand? So you got to get that out of your head, and you got to say to yourself, any one of these could be a loser, but with that type of action, I have to own it. I have to own it. If I'm a believer in flow, that type of action, I don't care what the stock looks like, I have to own calls. And, think of it logically. A lot of times, Karen, as you know, the consensus is wrong in this game. When a stock looks its best and everybody wants to own it, what happens? Pull. When a stock looks like it's breaking down, ready to roll over, oh no, it broke the 200-day moving average. What happens? And Jim hit the nail on the head. Your job as a trader is just to manage your risk, right? Know what you have at risk if you're wrong. That you should know ahead of time, no matter what. And that's it. There's no reason to have any emotion. In my opinion, there's no reason to do any further research and try to talk yourself out of it or anything like that. If it's a loser, it's a loser. You're not going to find a little tidbit that's going to help you find whether it's a winner or a loser. If it catches aggressive activity, it's worth owning. And as long as you're prepared for a loser, the name of the game, Karen, is you're going to win a hell of a lot more than you lose. I can promise you that. You know what I mean? You're going to win a hell of a lot more than you lose. That's all that matters. That's an edge in this game. That's the definition of an edge. An edge is not a crystal ball. An edge is not something you hit 100% of the time. I don't know, not one trader, professional trader, throughout my career that's never wrong. I've never heard of that in my life. Off any edge. So that's it. And again, everybody has a different style. There's no one way to trade this. Like I have a certain style. You got to see members in the room. There's a million different styles. Okay, but the basics are still the same. The basics are still the same. Okay, if the name catches aggressive sweeper activity, you gotta buy it and manage your risk, and that's your job. That's all you need to do. However it is you play it, whether it's options, equity, whether you're, I don't know, selling puts, whatever strategy it is you're comfortable with that you feel you can find success with, nobody else can tell you that. Well, yeah, there are people that, will tell you they hit 95% or they're never wrong. And I mean, everything, it's life though, guys. I'm not trying to get philosophical here. It's life. You're always going to be wrong. There's nothing, there's nothing to be afraid of, ashamed of. I think losers are good. I think what happens, a lot of traders, they go on a hot run, and it was the market predominantly that caused that hot run. And then the first sign of a loser, they don't allow that to be a loser, and it wipes out all their profits. So instead of having 6 winners and 1 loser over the course of 3 months, they had 6 winners, 1 big loser, and didn't make any money. But this is stuff as traders we have to work on, but you try not to make it too difficult. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. If you can keep it as simple as possible, the better. Just be prepared. If this is a loser, this is what it's going to look like to me. That's it. And if I see more winners than losers, I'm going to be in the green. If that's not enough, if you need 3,000% on weeklies, like some people on Twitter push, you're going to find out the hard way that doesn't exist. When is asking about OSTK, OSTK interestingly caught two size bets on Friday before the news. Did you see that? Bastards. Right before the news. Let me see. How do can I go this way? Here we go. Look at this. We've been seeing a lot of spec activity. There's been some chatter of them going private, I think it is. So we've seen some small sweepers way out of the money stuff, like absurd strikes. Okay, this was, believe it or not, the most realistic action of late. You can see the 50s. You know what I mean? They paid decent premium. Like these are real orders. But it caught news. Who was it? Morgan Stanley took a stake. So it was up Friday aftermarket. I think like, what was it, 5-6%, if not more? Double check that. Jim is saying it was Morgan Stanley, yeah. But this was Friday, I think around lunchtime. Here, you can see the stock, 45.40. That's where the bet came in. So let me see, does it show on the chart, aftermarket? Somebody mentioned it to me. I didn't even know because I was out that it caught the news, but let me see. Yeah, you could see here 49. 49 closed at aftermarket. So that's $4 higher. Better than a sharp stick in the eye, huh? Over the weekend. Like who asked me about the insider trading earlier? You see, like that was FDA approval with the Sage. Yeah, maybe you can find a loophole there. Who's got inside info on FDA approval? It's a little difficult. How the hell does somebody explain this? How do you get away with this? You know what I mean? How do you get away with this? Size bets like this, the afternoon, a couple hours later, you catch that news. This guy doesn't get a knock. I got a knock twice. I don't even want to go into the details of the story. I got letters twice, if you can believe that. And I'm a little Pepsi Cola racketeer compared to these guys. Unbelievable, man. But yeah, when the flow's been bullish in OSTK, again, extended. I don't know if you know, this is probably one of the biggest winners off flow. There's been big winners all year because of the market, obviously. But look at this. I tell you guys the story. I didn't even know who they were, what they do. They were buying this thing at $16, $18. Look at this, $23. December 25s when the stock was 23. Look at this bet, $400,000 sweeper. Crazy. 1.4 million. I didn't even know what they do over stock. And now they're big. Yeah, now I know they're a Bitcoin play. They're doing some sort of Bitcoin platform. I'm saying when this was catching sweeper activity, Jim, we couldn't figure out what the hell they do. We didn't know it was a Bitcoin play back then. Sweepers probably knew. We didn't know. So yeah, as you can see 1024. That's the last time it caught any real action. When the stock was 37, 38. You can see here 29. So, and then this was Friday. Boom, boom. They've done well in this name, to say the least. They've done well. Did I miss anybody name-wise? Somebody asked me about Apple like 100 times. Let me just, Apple is not seeing any action that has me thrown out my chair. Just normal flow. You can see that circle there. That was the last time Apple had real aggressive sweeper activity. Has calmed down. And, not really top of my list right now. Not really top of my list. Looks okay. It looks okay. Held up better than the others. So that's why maybe it didn't squeeze recently like the others. But again, I can't predict what these guys are going to sweep. I can get a gauge based on the flow that's been coming in, what is likely to happen, because they tend to stick with these things longer. And right now, the best of action is everywhere else but here. Okay, everywhere else, from retail, transportation, materials, the steel, everywhere else, even some energy here and there. So all the stuff that has been neglected is in play now. Food, the food stocks, I can't leave that out. So just a couple of quick questions. Some people, hold on, where am I here? Oops. Some people have about the alert. Somebody was asking me, where are the questions here? I think they're over here. Hang on. Somebody was asking me if the alerts on private Twitter are different than Twitter. Yeah, a lot different. Basically, private Twitter is all the flow in real time as they would come into the Steamroom. It just goes right there with it. So this is what the private Twitter flow looks like. Okay? So as a PZZ sweeper hits, it goes right there. And I throw commentary explaining the action, brief commentary in right after that. The biggest difference between the room and the Twitter, obviously, is the audio video. In the room, I'm on audio, video, broadcasting. Basically, I'm like Al Michaels giving play-by-play to all the sweeper activity that comes in. So, I give my opinion on it. Aggressive sweepers in DPZ here, pretty aggressive action. Looks like they're playing for a squeeze. Or XYZ catches some nice sweeper activity out in April, more suited for swing trading. So, I give my impression on all the action as it comes in. Private Twitter is all the flow. All the flow. Okay? That's the difference between it. And that's why initially we didn't even spin off private Twitter. Private Twitter was only something that was included in membership to the Steamroom. But we spun it off for anybody who just wants the flow, who just wants sweeper activity in real time, the stuff I'm looking for. For anybody who maybe can't afford the Steamroom but wants wise guy activity. I mean, that's understandable, right? You're a smaller trader, you're new, or you're just getting started in the game, but find it interesting. Yeah, that's the difference in price. But it is included in the Steamroom, the chat room as well. So if you sign up to the Steamroom, you get private Twitter included. Okay, so it's not a separate thing you have to pay for. So basically, to leave off, here's what we got throughout the Saturday Sweep Series. We got a 3-day trial where you don't have to put a credit card down. You could come in and get a feel for everything. The only thing you won't have access to in this 3-day trial is private Twitter, and you won't be able to post. You won't be able to post your stuff on there in the room. Okay? Then if you're interested, we got 50% off the first month, so half off that. That includes everything, okay? And then we got private Twitter. If you just want private Twitter, $60 basically a month, and you get access to private Twitter. All right, at private Twitter, I post open interest stuff in the morning, some sentiment and wrap-up stuff at the close, and like I said, all the real-time action, details on the action right after it. The biggest difference is the audio, video, the webinars, and that stuff. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions? Rustin's saying if you just get the private Twitter, can you have the search abilities? No, you have no access to the Steamroom. private Twitter, you have no access to the Steamroom, just private Twitter. Now, Twitter gets in its moods, okay? At one point in time, Twitter, you could go at SL Steamroom and put in the symbol and get hold on, and get all the action. Now, I think it's 1 day it allows you to do it. Just last month, you could do it for its entirety. So I don't know if it's an app thing or what. I get different answers on this, and it seems to change. But you had a search type feature on Twitter, but for some reason it flips around. I don't know. Anybody else? Did I miss anybody? Any questions? Hold on, let me see. I saw an interesting one. What did I miss there? Every time somebody asks a question, it goes back to the beginning of this. Comcast, again, here's a good example. Comcast, the buying came into the lows, right? You predominantly leaps 2019, so you shouldn't even be worried about any of this noise up or down if you're in leaps. And there was some shorter term December Jan flow that came in after. If you played the December flow, you should be taking profits. If you're looking to catch a move bigger than this, and you're in December's, you're going to have a tough time. You're going to have a tough time. I mean, you're getting wrapped up into what you see some people posting on social media, and that's not realistic. You may get lucky. You may step on a big winner in some weeklies from time to time. But if your strategy is I want to buy Comcast out of all names at 35 and have it go to 50 in a couple weeks, I mean, you got to be realistic. So you could have rolled out. That could have been a strategy. You could have sold a chunk and maybe leave some. That's a strategy. But anything other than that, you know, I don't know what to tell you. Now, again, if you're in 2019 calls, I mean, more to you. I would leave it alone too. You know, and I wouldn't get too excited off this push anyway, because my plan is to hold it longer term. You're making a play for a bigger move if you're playing that. But if you're in front month stuff and this is not enough for you to trade, I don't know what to tell you. And if you're buying, if you bought this up here, I don't know if that's what you're mentioning. That's the total opposite of what I try to preach to you guys on here every day. You know, that's like VRX and every other name you guys ask me that I say there's no edge in anymore because she's gone. Nobody wanted Comcast down here when they were sweeping. If you're buying Comcast after this move, you know, my CZ, oh, that's what I was looking for. CZR seems like a good example at the moment because that hasn't moved yet. Yeah, a couple things there, Patrick. One, CZR, there was a lot of action tied to stock there. And somebody mentioned to me there's news there, something with their bonds. So I'm the last person to ask. But if you're talking about, if you're in CZR and you end up losing money, you look at it as just a loser and nothing more. The reason I'm not too excited about the flow in CZR, if that's your question, because there's been a lot of flow, a lot of the blocks have been tied to stock, that stock replacement. So, oh, you're not in it. Yeah, I wouldn't. It's something, there's better action out there, Patrick. There's better action. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, there's better action out there. Reason being, some of the flow has been clean, but some of the bigger blocks that I think you're referring to, they've been stock replacement. So it's not aggressive buying by no means. So there's a lot better looking action out there. Sam is saying, any thoughts on the recent flow in Gilead? Still too late? I mean, you had a little bit of a breather here. So I don't know what you mean by too late. Like Gilead caught action here, had, tradable move, but typical Gilead right back down. And then Gilead caught flow on Friday. So you're not really too late there. Some people may be calling you crazy because Gilead is a piece of garbage. But no, you're not too late there. You're not too late. Gilead, one name that has buried a ton of money, both smart and dumb money in Gilead. Patrick saying he bought the PZZA. Yeah, that, again, that's action more that I like than other people like, but I like that PZZA action. Again, they hit it here. Very tradable move here, okay? And then sells off, ready to roll over, and sweepers came in aggressively again. So I like that. I like that. And you're not buying something overextended, right? Right? Same level, same entry level. So listen, it could be a loser, right? It could end up being a loser even after a nice move here. It could be a loser, but that's a loser that you're willing to take. You're not buying a name overextended here. You're buying it at the right spot. It's been aggressive activity. You had the choice of two things I like too. If you want a quick trade out of it, they play Decembers. So you would have that quick trade. If you play Decembers, you want that quick profit and you want to get out of it. If you're looking for the bigger move, and there's been a lot of these names that have had bigger moves, they hit April perfect. You know what I mean? They hit April perfect. So if you're looking at options, that's the route to go. You got two choices there. It doesn't get any easier than that. Quick trade Decembers, April, you're willing to give more of a leash to, and you're looking for a bigger move. By the way, speaking of a bigger leash, how about Shaq when nobody wanted it? Sweeper activity, including leaps in Shaq, right into the teeth of that selling. They're still sweeping to this day. Friday, Shaq caught another sweeper. But another example, nobody wanted this thing. This thing was awful. But Shaq doesn't catch sweeper activity. Shaq's lucky he catches buyers, period. And there was some good-looking action there in Shaq. Faye's a name I tend to stay away from. ML, listen, the setup here is perfect. So it can be traded. The reason why I don't like it, too much chatter. Now, that could be good and bad. You could get a quick trade out of it type thing. But if you're looking for more, usually that move evaporates quickly. There's a lot of buyout crap. When you see a lot of buyout garbage, that usually tells you there's buried money in the stock and people are just looking to get out into some strength, my opinion. Usually the buyouts come when nobody's looking. You know what I mean? Usually the buyouts come when nobody's looking. So when there's too much chatter, too much noise, I don't really like to fool around with it. Jordan is saying, I remember you talking about the downgrade in Shaq on Saturday. Oh, yeah. There were sweepers into the downgrade in Shaq. So what happened was, it was right here. I remember it clearly. Okay, right here. Shaq caught sweeper action right in the lows here. Okay, there was leap 2019 sweeps and some other stuff. Had a nice move. Then this downgrade, there was a downgrade where the stock got hit. Okay, off a nice move, but stock got hit. they swept into that downgrade, which is a very good sign. So it gave you another entry per se. You know, let's say you missed it here, you didn't want to chase, downgrade, sweepers, call it the day. Yeah, and that's another thing, John, that I think a lot of retail traders shy away from is the action with time behind it. And I don't know why. Like, if you're a swing trader and you're looking for bigger moves, you have to have time. You have to. You're not going to be able to trade professionally, consistently profitable by trading weeklies and trying to hit home runs. You know, think about it. Wouldn't that be too good to be true anyway? You could buy stuff cheap for pennies in a short amount of time and make scores. Like, look at me, okay? I'm a day trader. I'm willing to give up the bigger score for the quicker profit, but a lot smaller. I'm not looking for home runs. If everything I played as a day trader, I'm looking for home runs, I'd be on the street corner with a cup. You know, so you gotta have a realistic approach. And John makes a good point. If you're working for a living and trading on the side, what the hell are you doing? Everything you play should have time behind it. You know, things reverse intraday. If you're in weeklies, a stock's moving higher and the stock reverses while you're working, how do you expect to make money like that? You know, so a lot of this game is just being realistic, I think. And traders, you know, they like to chase, some of the new traders like to chase unicorns. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. You got to look at it. The bigger the score you want to make, the more time you got to have, especially on options, where one down day in weeklies, you're done. One pullback, you're done. All the premium gets sucked out. You know, this way you go out 3-6 months on a name that catches sweeper activity. Let's say a name like Shaq catches initial sweeper activity. You like the name. You know, you swing trade on the side. I mean, that's a perfect setup for you to go 6 months out and catch a trend reversal. Why would you even want to bother fooling around with any of that other spec stuff that can go to zero in a blink of an eye? And Brent, you know, who's been here on the Saturday Sweep Series webinar since God knows, you know, saying the same thing. Absolutely. Got to pay for time to give yourself a chance. Otherwise, you're done in options. Done. Again, you can speculate on the other stuff. Don't get me wrong, but you're looking for the quick move. Like myself, I'm a day trader. I'm looking for the quick move. And you're looking to lock that in. So, like PZZA, okay, that last round of action that it caught, you get this, gone. You're not looking for more than that, and December's gone. You know, Comcast, out of all things, CMCSA, you're not talking about a big mover here. You know what I mean? It's a big name. You're playing December's, and you get this rip, and you're not locking that in, you're out of your mind. And you're in leaps, or you're 6 months out, you're in April or something like that, and you're holding? Because, of course, I agree with that. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Sandy's asking about LC. Probably the biggest piece of garbage in all of the land. Had some put selling, a decent amount of put selling on Friday. What I would say is somebody's out there calling bottom, so pretty much willing to bet that the lows, these lows here, are in. So the downside may be limited. The question is upside. That's the tricky part there. So that's the way I would look at it. Similar to this OCLR, if you guys remember. Back here, heavy put selling told us the downside was limited. The question was the upside going to be worth it? And that's something you have to weigh. Okay, but a lot of people like that, right? Minimal downside and some upside potential that may suit you. But, you know, if you're looking to play an option strategy where you need some sort of move to the upside to benefit, it may not be for you. All right. All right, guys, I appreciate Patrick just saying thank you. My pleasure, Patrick. Well, you guys, those of you who know me, know I enjoy talking this game, and I got a passion. This game in baseball, I can chew your ears off for days, but you know, it's a fun game. And when you guys finally see the light, you know, and the light again is not driving a Testarossa. The light is making money. When you play this game and you enjoy it, you're passionate about it, and you find a way to make money off of passion, there's nothing better than that in life. You know what I mean? So when you get to that point, that's when you're there and you look to improve. But I appreciate you guys coming out every Saturday, showing the support. Enjoy the weekend. Good luck next week. Happy holidays to those of you who I may not see. But I'll talk to the rest of you next week. Good luck next week.